back to the Sacred Birth Circle. This is the first episode of 2023, and I'm so honored we got to start with an interview with Tomeka James Isaac. She's an activist who's working very hard in the area of maternal health, trying to help other families have better outcomes in honor of her son, Jace. I hope that you will enjoy this episode and share it with everyone you know. This is Anna Vick. I am with you here at the Sacred Birth Circle with our first episode. I am just so excited to have our guest today, who is somebody that I've been connecting with quite a bit lately as we both work in the maternal health field, trying to raise awareness about stillbirth prevention and just networking with other people in the community. I've heard her name a lot, and it's just so exciting that we get to have her here today to share her own story and also the work that she's doing. So, Tomeka, say hello.
Hi, I'm Tomeka Isaac. I am the co-founder of Jace's Journey. I am located in Denver, North Carolina, and Jace's Journey was an organization birthed out of our experience. It is named after our son, Jace, who we lost in 2018. And that's how I got here. That's how I got into maternal health. That's how I met Anna and got involved with Push and all the things. So I'm really happy to be here. So thanks, Anna, for inviting me to be the first live for 2023. That's exciting. So just happy to be here, and I'm looking forward to sharing our story with your audience.
Thank you so much. We're both from North Carolina too, so we'll have to get together. Honestly, like, the reason for doing these for me is that we were just talking about it. We go to these events, these councils, these things that are run by the government that discuss issues pertaining to maternal health, and they don't include the voices of families often. And so I feel like it's just as important. A lot of my podcast has special guests that are doctors and that are researchers in this field, because I do think the research matters. But as I'm also in this as a parent myself, I've come to see that a lot that gets discussed is not truly what is going on, for families. Like, the research is not fully complete, first of all. The data collected is not done properly at this point. We're all advocating for like the Shine for Autumn Act right now, because unfortunately, when you lose a baby, the first thing that happens is you get all these options. And sometimes I got discouraged about autopsy, and we'll discuss about your case, what you guys ended up doing, but I didn't have any reason. I have a cause immediately following my son's death. Everything looked fine. My son Owen was perfect. I was perfect. I had perfect pregnancy. So we were just in shock and disbelief. We didn't understand what was going on here. So I was trying to do my own research, trying to figure this out. The doctors were not helping. They were basically presenting barriers themselves. So I didn't know what to do, my husband either. So we continue to have more babies, try to have children. We did lose another miscarriage after. Then we had my rainbow baby and a very high risk situation. And so finally, 6 years later, I got the cause of my son's death from a placenta pathologist, which is a specialist, which not everyone has access to nor knows about. And so I finally found, what caused my son to die, which was cord compressions. And I'm going back now because I want this to be input correctly into the data. And I'm actually having to fight for this to be done, because for some reason they don't want to go back, but they will for any other person who dies. Of course, if you get new evidence, you want to have accurate data. And I'm saying this is important to me. This needs to be in there for the record for research. So I already know that, like, from my own personal experience, it's incorrect. But also, as you lose a child and you're looking for reasons and what happens, and you start to blame yourself, and then you're like, well, I don't really see myself in the data, like, and what they say is causes and things like that. So there's a reason we have problems, and it's because they're not listening to parents and they're not involving us. So for me, I mean, having someone like yourself, not only are you unfortunately in my shoes as well, losing a baby, but you're also in the community now and you're hearing a lot of stories. I think, you may not have a PhD, but your experience level, unfortunately, is way higher than those people even, so I think our voices are much more important in that sense. So I just wanted to let you share your story a little bit of how your pregnancy was, and you can share as much or as little as you want for that.
Okay. Well, I say we do have PhDs, right? Because that lived experience is something that nobody else can get. Like, regardless of how much education you have, we have an experience that is our own, like regardless of what it was, regardless of the situation. Yeah, there are similar stories, but our stories are our own. And I think that's why it's so always so important for us to share our stories, because yes, you're right. I talk to a lot of people and I've heard a lot of stories, but our story again is it always seems like you're still on this little island by yourself, no matter what it is. And just like you, I thought I was having the perfect pregnancy, right? Just a little backstory. It took us a little while to get pregnant. I got married when I was 38 years old, and we didn't try right away, but like between 39 is when we were like, okay, we're going to start trying to have a baby. And it actually took a little while. I actually had gone to a reproductive endocrinologist to like do some testing. But for me and my husband at the time, it just didn't feel right for us. So we didn't go through with IVF or IUI or any of those things. And we kind of just kept trying at home, at home or wherever. No, we just kind of
She was trying, guys. She did a good try.
And eventually we got pregnant. So we got pregnant with Jace in 2017, and I had a really good pregnancy. I was immediately told I would be high risk because again, I was 38 when I got married. So now I'm 40. You're going to be high, you're considered high risk for preeclampsia, and we want to put you on this low dose of aspirin because it helps prevent preeclampsia. I'm like, okay, cool, whatever. And I had gone to my regular OB, so my annual pap smears, all those things, same doctor. I was like, oh, this is perfect transition. Been going to him for years. But like my specific OB had like taken on some management role at the hospital and wasn't there as often, but it's a clinic. So they're like, well, we want you to see everybody anyway, because we don't know who's going to deliver your baby. And, this is my first, pregnancy. And, we were ecstatic. Like we were just super excited. And, we found out it was a boy. We, did some genetic testing, like what trisomy at 13 and all those things. So we did some of those things and everything kind of checked out. And they told me, part of me being high risk would be like my ultrasounds would be done at maternal fetal medicine. But other than that, that was really all they said. And my pregnancy was good. I didn't have any morning sickness, so I was super excited about that. I didn't really gain a lot of weight. I probably gained about maybe 30, 40 pounds at the most while I was pregnant. And it was smooth sailing. Like we were living our best lives going. I was just sing You Are My Sunshine every single morning to him in the shower. And it was really good. And at about 35 weeks is when I started going to the doctor every week. Well, I think I literally had just started that. So we were going to the doctor every week. And at 35 weeks, was just a regular appointment. And during that appointment, they were like, well, he's measuring a little small, so we want to send you to maternal fetal medicine and an ultrasound. So I immediately go to maternal fetal medicine. I get this ultrasound, and he was blocking the umbilical cord what's in my records. He was blocking the umbilical cord, and they couldn't get a good reading. So they couldn't really determine why he was measuring small, what was going on with the umbilical cord. But you have another appointment next week. We'll just, follow up next week. I go, through the weekend, go next appointment, which is the following Thursday. So this was Thursday, May 4th. Next appointment is Thursday, May 10th. Go in, non-stress test. He failed a non-stress test. I'm like, okay, we need for you to go back to maternal fetal medicine and get another ultrasound. I'm like, okay. I immediately go back to maternal fetal medicine. I get another ultrasound. And they're like, oh, he's fine. He scored an 8 out of 8 on this ultrasound scale, whatever that means. He's perfect. Look, you're good to go. I'm good. I'm like, okay, cool. And it just happens to be Mother's Day weekend. So the 13th was Mother's Day. That was that Sunday. And we had gone to Greensboro because my husband's mom lives in Greensboro. We went to go visit her, hang out with her. And I was eating like all this stuff. It's kind of random, just throwing stuff together. And that night, we got back home, and that night we were, it was like in the wee hours of the morning, probably like 2, 3 o'clock in the morning. And my stomach was like really hurting. And I'm like, in my mind, I'm like, it has to be like food poisoning. Maybe I don't know what it was, but I thought it was food poisoning because my stomach was hurting so badly. And I got up and I tried to, do number two, but it wouldn't, like I couldn't. And so I eventually threw up. And when I threw up, I felt better. So I'm like, okay, well, that's done. So I go back to sleep. And that next morning I wake up because I'm still working at this point. And I felt really sore in my abdomen section. I felt really sore. And I kind of text into work. So I'm texting my manager. It's like, I don't feel well. I'm not going to come in. And, no harm, no foul, just kind of lay in bed all day. My husband had to go to work. So he calls my best friend who, works from home. And she came. He was like, just in case, something goes down, I'm just going to have her here. So she comes and she's there with me. And I kind of lay in bed all day. So around 4:30 in the afternoon, this is May 14th, I asked her to come help me go to the restroom. So she comes up, I'm trying to get up out of bed, still feeling the soreness in my abdomen. And when I stood up, I passed out. So I come to, and I'm laying on the floor, of course, and she's on the phone with 911. And she's like double fisting, like she has the phone with 911, then she has the phone with my mother. My mother, she puts the phone with my mom to my ear, and I'm talking to my mom. My mom's like, hey, do you know what day it is? And all these things. Ambulance comes, they scoop me up, they take me, rush me to the emergency room. I get there. By the time I get there, Brandon's there. Brandon's my husband. If I didn't say that, Brandon's my husband. He's there. A few of my family members are there that are local, and some friends. So we're all kind of there. I get there. I'm admitted into the ER. I'm admitted to the ER at 6 p.m. So I'm sitting there, and I think they do a Doppler. I have no idea. I'm lucid, like I know what's going on, but I'm also not in the position to make any type of decisions for myself. So they come in, I think they do the Doppler, and we wait, and it gets quiet and we wait. So this is 6 o'clock. They hook me up to IVs. They, give me a catheter and all these things. And then at about 7:50 is when they do an ultrasound. So they do the ultrasound and they leave the room, and then it gets really quiet. Like it gets super pin drop quiet. And I'm still kind of on the phone with my mom. And I remember saying, they don't know what they're doing. Something's not right. Like they don't know what they're doing. Something's not right. And this lady walks in, this doctor walks in, my husband, again, my husband's there. We're standing there. I'm laying in the bed. He's standing beside me. And she says, oh, your son died in utero.
Oh my God.
And we were like, what? Like what? Your son died in utero. Like I've never seen anybody's heart break, but I looked at my husband and I knew what he was feeling, because I was feeling it too. And we were both super shocked. But then like the delivery of it was like, it was so nonchalant and so matter of factly, and not even like maybe you don't know us, I understand that, but you just told us our son died, and you couldn't have found anything in your past experience to deliver that a little softer. But we really honestly didn't have a lot of time to even process that news, because they're like, but we don't really have a lot of time to worry about, this, because you have HELLP syndrome. And again, we're both standing there like, okay, so what is HELLP syndrome? Because I had never heard of it. He had never heard of it. And they never explained it. Like they never explained what it was. And we have to, and it was like, we have to induce you. And I'm like, you just told me that my son died. I'm pretty sure I can't handle an induction right now. Can I have a C-section? They said no. And not only could they not give me a C-section, they also could not do it there, the induction there, because I was tachycardic, which means my heart rate was like really high. So my heart rate was like fluctuating between 130 and 160, and I'm laying down. So they were like, they didn't have anybody there that could actually monitor me during the induction, my heart during the induction or something like that.
Mhm.
So they needed to transfer me to another hospital. So, 7:50, we found out Jace has passed away. I have HELLP syndrome. I'm sitting there, like I'm just waiting at this point on transport. They're not really doing anything. So at about almost 10 o'clock p.m., they do a CT scan. That CT scan is then sent to the hospital that they're transferring me to. And I finally am released from this hospital on my way to the other hospital about 10:43, so almost 11 o'clock p.m. Mind you, I got there at 6 o'clock. So here I am in transport. One of the residents happened to look at my CT scan. She wasn't required to. She told me, she was like, Tomeka, it had to be God, because there was no reason for me to look at your CT scan. Like there was just something in my spirit that told me to look at it. So when she looks at my CT scan, she realizes that I'm bleeding internally. And I've been bleeding this whole time I'm sitting at the hospital. And she calls back to this ER and she says to them, did y'all know she was bleeding internally? And of course they didn't, because they literally had just done the CT scan. So they were like, she needs to go in emergency surgery. Y'all need to turn the lights on. Y'all need to get her here now. And she needs surgery right now. So I have no idea any of these things are happening in the background, because I'm in the back of the bus, right? Like I'm in the back of the bus. I don't know about the blood. I don't even know about the CT scan at this point. So they wheeled me into the operating room at the other hospital, and a nurse, a doctor, I'm not really sure who it was, whispers in my ear, and she was like, hey, we're getting ready to give you a C-section. And I remember being kind of puzzled, because I was like, I just kind of asked for that. And they said no. So they, she tells me this, I have that thought, and then they put me to sleep. Turns out I had a liter of blood in my stomach and a softball size blood clot on my liver. And HELLP syndrome, for those people who don't know, is hemolysis, elevated liver enzymes, low platelets. So I'm bleeding internally, but I'm also not clotting. And this softball size, this blood clot that's on my liver is close to rupturing. So I'm like bleeding like water. I have blood in my stomach. It's pouring. Like they literally have to pack me with sponges to try to stop the bleeding. And they ultimately kept me open because they didn't know how to stop it, and they didn't know when it was going to stop. So they kept me open. They cut me, they take Jace out, and then they pack me with sponges. I coded one time that night. The doctors were like, we don't know why she's still alive, and we don't know if she's really gonna, we don't know. Like we've thrown everything at her that we can. We don't know. If she wakes up, so this is Monday night into Tuesday morning, if she wakes up, it probably won't be until about Thursday or Friday. And that's if she wakes up at all. So, here's my poor husband. My husband has found out that he lost his son, and now, he's making decisions that may or may not save my life. Like, what do you even do with that? And, you talk about like autopsies. We didn't have a chance. Like we didn't have a chance to make a decision on anything. I have no idea if anybody asked. So no, we don't know specifically what Jace's cause of death was. We've had conversations with a midwife, a couple of midwives, and it's like, it sounds like it may have been placental abruption just because of the amount of blood in your stomach, but no, real facts about what happened. The OB office that I had gone to, for at least 10 years, 7 to 10 years, never heard a word from them. During this, I know they called them because they had to get my medical workers, because it was a different health system that I ended up being a part of or going to. So, here in Charlotte, the area, it's Atrium and then Novant. So I was a Novant patient and then ended up being transferred to an Atrium hospital. So, from, that medical connection, I don't even think they had connected their records at that point. So they had to call and get them. So I have no idea what Jace's ultimate cause of death was. And nobody's ever offered that information up. So, I wake up that Wednesday. So I surprised them all. I'm a Taurus the bull, if that tells you anything about me. And when I woke up, I wore glasses, contacts, and I couldn't see a thing. And I'm also intubated. So when I first wake up, I'm intubated and I have mitts on my hands. Apparently, I tried to pull that whole tube out. Sounds just like me. So they put mitts on my hands, and I remember waking up and my mom looking at me, who of course was in Tennessee when all this went down. So I wake up, my mom's there, and she looks at me and she asks me if I want to hold Jace. And I shake my head, but I'm trying to also tell them that I can't see. So I can't talk because I'm tubed, and I can't see because I don't have on contacts or glasses, and they're not in the room. So I'm like kind of playing charades with them. And they didn't get it at first. Like it took them a minute. But when they finally understood, and I ended up getting my husband's glasses, and I hold Jace for a few minutes. I really couldn't see his face just because our prescriptions are so different. And then a nurse walks in and say, "Hey, we got to take him out right now. We got to take him to the morgue." So I would say probably less than 5 minutes is how long I held my son, because ultimately I would be in the hospital for 45 days.
Wow.
That blood clot on my liver actually ended up rupturing. I was, again, still cut open. I was in the ICU for a week. The day before Jace's funeral, I got an infection in my abdomen, and that stemmed from the liver, because they had embolized my liver. So they had killed off part of my liver or tied it off. And that part got infected. So I ended up getting an abscess on my liver that caused an infection. And I have, this really deep cut in my abdomen that required a wound vac, which is like a machine that sucks out moisture in order for you to heal faster. So I have this situation. I have this home health aide, and this 1 week I'm home. So I have this health aide that comes in, and she comes in and she's like, "Hey, I kind of smell an odor. I need for you to go to the ER." So the day before Jace's funeral, we go to the ER about 10 o'clock that night. At 5 o'clock in the morning, that's when they tell me that they want to readmit me. Jace is buried about 3.5 hours away from here, because I'm from Eastern North Carolina, and we buried him beside my father. So me and Brandon made a decision. Like, I'm still sick. Like, I had a fever the whole week I was out, like every single day. We made a decision. If one couldn't go, the other couldn't or wouldn't. And our moms pretty much kind of handled Jace's funeral. So not only did I only hold my son for less than 5 minutes the day I woke up, like I never saw him again, ever.
I'm so sorry.
And I was intubated again when I held him the first time. So I mean, I couldn't say anything, so it was just kind of like this lost moment. And probably the hardest thing about this whole situation has been just not being able to get those moments to say goodbye, or just that time, because I was so sick and unconscious for most of the time. I'm really thankful though that night, when they delivered him, that Brandon was able to spend a lot of time holding him, and my family was there and they were able to hold him and love on him and stuff. But that was something that was stolen from me. So when I finally was released from the hospital, I was just looking at my medical records. And when I was in the ER, one of my friends asked me, she was like, "Mika, have they been doing urine samples on you?" And I remember in that moment saying no, just like, "Yeah, no, I don't think so." And I called her. I was like, "Why did you ask me that?" And she said, "Well, when you were in the ER, your urine was almost black." And I was like, Hmm. Okay. So that triggered me to like look at my medical records. And yeah, no, like the whole time I was pregnant, they didn't do one. Not one. Like they did one to verify I was pregnant. So we were talking about, let's say November 2017.
Mhm.
So here we are at May 2018. Jace was due on June 14th, 2018, but they were going to actually induce me at 37 weeks. So we had about 2 more weeks before we were supposed to be induced anyway. And they had not done a urine sample the whole time I was pregnant, even though they told me I was high risk for preeclampsia. And at the time, I didn't know that protein in urine was a symptom of preeclampsia. And of course didn't know anything about HELLP syndrome, nor was I told anything about any of these things. So, when they told me I was high risk for preeclampsia, the focus is always high blood pressure. And I have a very normal blood pressure, always have it. Even in my pregnancy, it got a little higher for me, but it wasn't, of course, preeclampsia high. But when you get on the other side of this and you're looking at your medical records and then you realize like it literally could have been caught, like if somebody had just decided to do a urine sample in the 2 appointments I had before this, to where, Jace was exhibiting signs of something going on and you never figured it out. So they never really figured out why he was measuring small. And then when I went to that next Thursday appointment, nobody even mentioned it anymore. And of course, it was the same MFM office. So nobody even said anything else about it. And I'm like, pregnant, you know what pregnancy brain is like. I wasn't thinking about it because everybody seemed like everything was fine. So when you get on the other side of this, there's just like, oh, wait, what? Because if I say something to anyone, they're like, oh, my doctor took urine samples on me every single time I walked in the office. And I was like, yeah, I've heard that 1,000 times. And, like looking back on it, there was one time one of the nurses was like, hey, do you need to pee? And I was like, no, do you need for me to pee? And she was like, no, don't worry about it. So like that nonchalantness in my mind is like, oh, well, they don't really need that. That's just kind of like something we do. Obviously, it's not. So, I mean, after everything happened is when I didn't know there was a maternal health crisis when I got pregnant either. So just this experience opened my eyes to all these other things. And then when we got on the other side of it, we are just like traumatized, like completely, utterly traumatized. Like, how do you even, what just happened? Because again, I had a really great pregnancy. I did every single thing they told me to do. I had private insurance. Not to say I'm like a genius or anything, but I have a couple master's degrees, like went to all the appointments, got prenatal care early, like all the things that people say is a reason why there's a maternal health crisis. I did all those things right. Every single one of them. So what happened? And it was just too much. It was too much to process. It was too much to hold on to. And I was like, we have to do something. We just have to do something. Like, imagine like this devastated my whole entire family, my whole tribe. Like we're all like traumatized.
Mhm.
Because when I tell you like, I shouldn't be here, literally. And you have a doctor who says to you, I don't know why I looked at that CT scan, but thank God I did, because had she not, I would have been induced on labor and delivery, bleeding internally, and I would have died. Point blank period. They didn't even understand why I was still alive. And that's without knowing anything else. Like they didn't understand it. And they were like, they told me, like, pure scientists were like, oh, you're a miracle. Like, I don't even know. I can't even call it. Like, I have no idea. But thank God I was at a teaching hospital because I don't know. Because she pulled in like two of a couple different organizations within that hospital to try to figure out how to save my life. And had she not done that, I would not be here to share Jace's life or his story. And that was one of the reasons why we started Jace's journey. It was like, you know, his death is not gonna just be that. Like, our story did not end that day. His story did not end that day. And people will know who he is, and his name and his story will change or save somebody's life at some point. And that's really why we started Jace's journey. And I'm here for it. Like, you know, I've met some amazing, amazing people in this space that nobody ever wanted to be in. But it's a necessary process. It's advocacy is so necessary because like you said earlier, we get in these spaces and we look at these working groups and there's all these scientists talking about, oh, well, you know, this test and this test and this test. And when the true thing for me is humanity. The true thing for me is, how is this affecting people? And people are like, oh, well, it's just, I've had a doctor say, it's really not that many lives. So when you talk,
Yeah,
right.
the
And you're
statistic
just
is
like,
rare. I'm like, it's not really rare when it's 1 out of 170, first of all.
right.
That's
And it's
actually
not
a
that
really
many
high
women.
number.
So when you talk about maternal mortality, it's not really that many women dying. No, you know, like, I guess in the grand scheme of things, when there's like billions of people in the country, maybe 800 doesn't seem that big to you, but you're just counting the 800. That person knows on average like 20, 30 people that are now affected by their death. So no, it's not just those people. And to me, one person is enough, especially when 80% of the deaths are preventable. Just like with stillbirth, like Jace's death was definitely preventable. We could have induced that, like we could have induced that day, that Thursday. We could have had him. He could have survived.
How many weeks was he
Outside,
then?
huh?
How many weeks was he at that appointment?
35.
Oh yeah.
You know what I'm saying? So it's not like
Yeah, they take out babies
it
at
just
like
happens.
30 weeks if they notice a problem, you know,
Yeah, like
then they
you
can
could
get
have
better
totally
outcomes.
induced me that day and gotten him out and, you know, given me steroids and done all those things. Had you been paying attention to what you were doing, had you talked to and connected the records that you're supposed to connect, you know, had you holistically looked at what was going on, had you done the testing you're supposed to do. And, you know, we talked last week about ACOG's recommendation for urine samples.
Which
And what
actually it came out the year before you. I was just looking at it. It says 2017.
yeah, and
No
you're
wonder
just like,
everyone, because I had a baby before you. My first was in
right.
2011, and I do remember 2011. That was routine. We'd got that, but I don't know that I remember it after in my like last pregnancy. I did have
Mhm.
high risk though, so they probably did a little extra. But yeah, it's weird how all of a sudden they decide we don't really need to be
Yeah,
doing.
we don't need this anymore. And since, you know, since we posted some of the things that we did for Push last week, I've had a couple women reach out to me and say, hey, this happened to me too. Like, they stopped doing urine samples. I think the caveat people need to realize is I was high risk. I wasn't low risk. And that verbiage is, you know, based on, that summary is based on low risk pregnancies, but I wasn't. You know what I mean? Like, at a minimum, you should be doing a little bit more, because you told me I was high risk. I didn't tell you I was, because I didn't have any pre-existing conditions. You know, like I said, my blood pressure has always been fine. I'm not diabetic or any of those things. So I didn't have any pre-existing conditions. You told me I was high risk. And then what?
What
And
baffles me is like the high risk situation versus low risk. If you look at the causes of or the risk of stillbirth, who has more risk? Actually, first time moms have more risk. So
yep.
shouldn't every first time mom get the best care available immediately? Like, not wait for her to lose the baby. Then next time around, we'll give you guys all the care you should deserve. You know, it's available. The science is there. We're not asking for you to go in a time machine to the future and bring back a
Right.
machine. Like, just do the basics that you do for everyone, everywhere. And especially, like I said, your risk is higher at low, you know, if you're first time mom. It's also higher right now if you're a Black mom. So, I mean, there again, You could have gotten more care for that. I don't understand it. I feel like the risk thing is just nonsense. Like we shouldn't call it low risk or high risk. I think that's more for insurance purposes. Like,
Yeah,
oh, the high risk, yeah, you can do this and you can anything you need, the scans, we'll go ahead and
right.
process that with
Anything extra
insurance.
you need,
But
yeah,
if you're low risk, no, you're not, you don't qualify for this care yet, you know?
which is so crazy to me. But like, there's not really even a standard protocol for someone who's high risk, let alone other than the fact that your ultrasounds are done at maternal fetal medicine. I think it's the only thing that they're like, oh, okay, well, this is something that happens. But other than that, who really knows? And then like with ACOG being the regulatory body of, OB care, and then it's just it baffles my mind. It baffles my mind how they also said that decreasing the amount of urine samples creates less time for nurses to actually do their jobs. Because if you think about an OB office, what do nurses do in an OB office? Because they prep the patient and they do the testing. But that's your job.
Mm-hmm.
So you're telling me that my son's life would have been more time consuming for your nurse? Yeah, no, I'm not okay with that.
No.
Like, I'm not okay with that.
Yeah,
And
if
it needs to
anyone
be
wants to
fixed.
read that, I can drop the link for that in the comments later, but
Yeah, that needs to be
it's
fixed.
really sad. I mean, and that's why we empower the parents as much as we try to work within the system and we attend everything we can and we try to use our voice for you guys to, fight for some change and actually what is being provided. At the end of the day, if you don't know what you don't know, that's a problem too, because like all of us, we trust the system, we trust our doctors. We were, all of us educated. It doesn't matter if you even were a doctor. I mean, some women have lost babies who are obese. So
Yep,
it's not about that. It's also, just understanding like it's their paternalistic nature. You walk in, you have a concern, they may or may not listen to it. They may do the same amount of tests that they should or not. They might miss one of the tests. Even if they do an NST these days where they are checking like very thoroughly, they think that NST is only good for that amount of time where the machine is on you and seeing how the
right.
baby's moving and the heartbeat and everything. So you leave and you still feel uneasy. They should have continued or they should have kept you there, but the mother is thinking, okay, good, everything's clear. You've told me I'm fine, I'm going home, and it's really hard for you to speak out in that time when you don't even know that your baby could be dying like mine. I didn't know about stillbirth at that time. I didn't know that that could happen. I was a healthy, normal pregnancy, like expecting smooth sailing. I'm in the last trimester.
Right.
So it's really terrible looking back, like you said, looking at the records in the end, you're like, oh my gosh, that one time that I said this and they really didn't test much. Should I have done more? So then you carry guilt and a feeling of shame and just like it's unfair because the burden becomes the parents' burden when it really is the system and they failed us. And that's why we call this episode, failing families. They failed the whole family and that, we trusted them and they didn't do 100%.
Right. They and you think about, doctors and how much school they go through, like there's no way, and I don't want anybody to think that you can do this. Like there's no way to know everything about pregnancy. There's no way as a person who is not in the field can know everything about pregnancy. That's why, we always advocate for people having to support people, whether it's it's like if you have a midwife and you have a doula, or you just have a cousin that's with you and can like remember for you, because being pregnant, like pregnancy brain is real. Like I'm not pregnant right now and I can't remember stuff. So you know what I mean? Like just having an advocate, like if you can't advocate for yourself or you feel like you need, someone there with you, take someone there with you. I think, for me, I really trusted my doctors to do what they were supposed to do. I don't go to your job and tell you how to do it. So, I don't expect for you to come to my job and tell me how to do it. So I trusted the system that I was raised to trust because, you guys have they have more education, they have all these things. But I think one thing that's missing in healthcare right now is the care. Like I think like patient-centered care is really ultimately how we get past this, right? Like you have to treat that patient specifically based on that patient's needs. Like regardless of what these statistics show in Black women, regardless of what these statistics show in white women, how does Tomeka's body work? You know, how does Anna's body work? Because me and Anna have had completely different lives and completely different experiences that could affect the way that but like symptoms show up in pregnancy. You know, like we have to get to a point where we have conversations with patients, where we partner with our patients or patients partner with their providers to understand holistically what's going on with their body. And nobody knows your body more than you do. So, you know, I'm all about self-advocacy. I'm all about, if you feel like and you are in a position to do this, like if you feel like your doctor's not listening to you, get another doctor. You don't have to go to your grandma's doctor just because that's the person that's been in your family for however long. And I know in some cases it's really hard for like rural areas that don't have a lot of access. But, you know, there's a lot of telehealth going on right now. So, you know, if you are in a position where you feel like you're not being listened to, you're not being heard, especially if you're pregnant, get a second opinion, because that could be you or your baby's life. Like what you're feeling is valid, no matter what anybody is telling you in your ear. What you're feeling is valid, and you know better than anybody else. So that's my spiel. Like, make sure you're advocating for yourself. Make sure you understand and listen to what your body's telling you, because I think we get talked out of what we're feeling a lot of times, and we have to be strong enough to be like, look, I know what I'm feeling. If you're not going to hear me, then I'm going to find somebody else that will, because we don't have time to waste anymore. Like, these deaths are preventable and we have to stop them. And we
Yeah.
won't do it if we keep being quiet about it.
And you can't really go back, which is like the hard thing, because it's like, oh, I wish I could have told myself this at that time.
But you also need to know,
right.
most people don't even know like there's a maternal health crisis
Oh,
still.
no.
And I think we know because we're always in the space, but most people don't even know.
No, they're just going to the doctor like,
They're
oh,
just
now I'm
going
gonna
to the
have the
doctor.
baby, you know, let's have the baby
Exactly.
shower. Now the baby's coming. But I just wanted to say, like you were mentioning, knowing your body, they will tell you, whoever's they, it could be your family even,
Right.
that things are normal for you. Like,
Mhm.
oh, it's normal to be uncomfortable. And they might write off like you're just pregnant, you know, you're just getting tired because of this. And I had that feeling of like overexhaustion with Owen at the end. And if for some reason for you that just doesn't feel right, like just go in and check it, you know.
Yeah.
There's nothing wrong with that. You're not bothering, you know, maybe you'll get charged something, but at the end of the day, your insurance ends up tapped fully and you have to pay the full bill at the end of the month or the year anyway, right? It's like a pregnancy is going to get to this point. So may as well use all the time that you can go in there.
Right.
But honestly, like at that time, I couldn't look back and say like, oh yeah, I would have, if I would have fought for this right then, because I really didn't think it was serious and nobody was taking it serious. So that's where we put the, you know, onus on the system as well. Is like,
Absolutely.
if anyone mentions anything's a little bit odd, say, you know what, thanks for coming in. Like, that's great. Let's check on that, instead of making it feel like always like it's a little bit of a bother. Or, you know, you might get a nurse who talks a little bit like, oh yeah, yeah, that's normal. You're, you know, oh, you're your first pregnancy. Oh yeah, you're just, you know, experiencing the normal pregnancy growth and whatnot. And it's hard because I see a lot of young ladies losing babies right now, especially because I'm on TikTok, and TikTok's where they all end up posting lost stories. And I'm like, this really sucks, because here is this perfect young, healthy woman, had everything, you know, planned for the baby, and she was doing all the right things. And at the end of the day, some of them do voice concerns like with fetal movement change, and they just don't get heard because of their youth, and, you know, people look at you
Yeah.
a certain way.
Like, where do you win? Like, how do you win? Like, they don't listen to Black women because they're Black. They don't listen to young women because they're young. You know what I mean? Like,
Well,
at
that's the
what point?
statistic, though. That's where the problem is. And that's why I really do believe like the CDC has the Hear Her campaign for maternal mortality, but I think it applies for stillbirth as well, is just listen. And every situation, listen to the patient, and then we can get somewhere, like you said, individualized care.
Yeah, it has to be. It has to be. And I think education from our perspective too is like, bringing awareness, like, hey, stillbirth happens. Stillbirth happens way more than they want you to think it does. And, you know, we have to normalize it. We have to normalize it because it is our lives at this point. Like this is normal for us. Like we've been here, we've done that, we know, and it doesn't go away. So we have to have these conversations so to make people aware, like there's some other stuff going on. Pregnancy is really great for a lot of people, but it really sucks for a lot of other people. And that's okay, because as long as we're having the conversation, we can change people's lives. Because I honestly feel like it's like the more you know about something, the opportunity you have to make better decisions about you and your baby, your life, your family, your whoever. Like as educated as you can be, as much knowledge as you can have, as much awareness as you can have, you can make better decisions. And we have to stop trying to sugarcoat things just because they're uncomfortable to talk about.
Yeah, people are afraid of scaring moms, and I'm like,
Right. I don't want to
there's
scare.
nothing scary about being prepared, because you get on a plane and everyone has to hear the spiel, and it's like, yeah, that sounds really awful, and you're saying it in front of my kids, like it sounds very scary. We're all going to go down and we're going to have to figure out how to put the life vest on.
Yeah.
But that's preparing you for the one case that might happen. Well, and this as well, 1 out of 170, that's actually more common than the plane going down, yet you don't want to tell me about that, and I'm a grown adult,
Right.
handle this. I'm a woman that am gonna have to take care of this baby as it grows. So you may as well tell me how to take care of my baby right now, right? Well, it might.
Exactly.
And
Because when you get to that stillbirth, there's no more talking. Like there's nothing else you can say to me at this point.
yeah, and it's like, oh, oops, I'm sorry. We don't know
Exactly.
what happened,
Well,
but
there
go have
was that
another
risk.
baby.
Like there was a risk that this could have happened, but you didn't say anything about that.
Yeah.
You didn't say anything about that.
No, and it
So,
would change the way you are in pregnancy to be prepared. And I mean, our accounts, like we talk a lot about it, and we've always kind of fumbled around, like, how should we say it? Do we want to be in their face about it? We don't want to scare them away. We want them to follow us. We want them to see it, but at the end of the day, whatever you put out, it's helpful. We've done a little campaign now, which you were in as well, the Stillbirth Break the Silence. And anyone who wants to post can post your stories for that with the hashtag. But I think that, right now we're in like a very blunt phase. I feel like we're going to try the blunt way, because the other way didn't work for so long. Like being
but
quiet
that's what
about
people
it.
do anyway. Like it's like we need honesty, we need transparency, we need honesty. People don't want to hear a bunch of blah blah blah. I don't like listening to blah blah blah. Don't blah 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 me. Tell me what I need to know in order to survive. Like tell me what I need, tell me what I need to know, tell me what I can do myself to help prevent something. Tell me that I need to count the kicks, which they don't really. I mean, some doctors do, but most doctors don't.
Or they
Tell
say
me
it
what I need
wrong,
to do, huh?
or they tell you wrong.
Right.
It's a lot of wrong advice about kick counting. You have to know your baby's normal pattern, and it's still online about 10 kicks in 2 hours. Oh, you're fine. And actually, I'm constantly debunking that online. Like I have to go back right now because I just posted something on TikTok and people are commenting, and they're trying to help each other, but they're giving each other the wrong advice. And I'm like, why is this so pervasive in our culture? No. So we're still not there. Nobody really knows what counting means, and getting
Right.
more normal pattern of your baby, because every baby's different. There's no minimum for, oh, your baby's fine if you got those 10. No, because if your baby normally has 30, all of a sudden 10 is a bad sign for you.
And
So
then
it's getting into the culture too. And also, like for us, this break the silence thing, I think has been powerful for other parents, because they see it and they realize there's no, you shouldn't feel guilty. You shouldn't feel like the stigma that I can't share my story. I can't talk about my baby. I can't talk about what happened to us because you feel guilty about it. I think the silence is what's keeping it going this way. And people
mhm.
kind of just imagining, like, well, she must have forgot to take a
Or she
vitamin,
didn't get the
or she
prenatal
didn't go to
care.
her
Yeah.
appointment. She
Yep.
must have done something wrong on her end where this happened to her, but it's not going to happen to me. But newsflash, a lot of us are normal, low risk pregnancy or high risk with a good care. And, it still happened to us. So us coming out with it like we are now, I think it's going to help a lot of people down the road, and especially other lost parents too, to feel like they don't have to carry that guilt and, shame themselves, keep quiet because they feel judgment. And at the end of the day, it was nothing we did, no one's fault this happened. We love our children and we're still going to talk about them regardless. And this is a way to
Absolutely.
do it in an honorable way and make them feel like, we all can impact the future for other families. And we are, I don't know how many people you've helped, but like my own little baby account, I already know I have at least 3 babies in the world that are alive thanks to what I do constantly. So, I mean, that makes me happy. I'm like, oh,
Absolutely.
it's looking out for these kids. We don't want anyone to suffer like we have. And it's not, like you said, these numbers, statistics, stuff like that, people can easily like brush it off. Like, oh, that's not that many. Well, it actually is a lot. Like I said, it is not a rare statistic. It's actually pretty high. But if you think about it, it's Owen and Jace and it's Tomeka's family, my family. Then you start to realize like this is actually something we need to like go and work on. It's a public health crisis. It's not just, oh, one person this happened to this year. No, it's actually 65 a day. Anyways, that's a lot of
That's
babies.
a lot. Like that's a lot to me. It's a lot. And yeah, it's just a lot. It's like 65 families affected by stillbirth every day. Every day. And you're just like, we have to stop this. We have to stop it.
Yeah, and it's not impossible. That's the other thing, is breaking that, because people think, oh, it's not preventable. Even the doctors themselves sometimes like, we don't know what happened. It just happened. They're like, can we look back? Can we go look at it together? And they won't go through that process with you. I get stuck with like the lawyers who are like, oh, this is all. We can only just see you and say goodbye kind of thing. Like they do not help you. So they themselves don't go and look at the care they provided and say, where could I have done better? I
Mhm.
had an appointment with mine just after finally getting that research back. And I said, did you look at the research? Because he emailed it to him and he's like, oh, he didn't really act like he even put any care and attention to that. And I said, okay, well, let's talk about it, because it was a court accident. I know you guys don't do anything for courts, but maybe you could have taught me about fetal movement more and we could have discussed it. And all your appointments, you could have asked about it. And he said, yeah, I think I put a pamphlet, we put a pamphlet in there. When you get pregnant, you should have got a pamphlet about kid counting and a bag of stuff. And I was like, well, how helpful is that, right? For a person who is told every time that everything looks normal, everything's healthy, and you're not asking about it. And I never knew about it, more than just reading that pamphlet at the time. It wasn't made to seem super important. So I told him, maybe you should do a little bit more for the future. But that's what bothers me the most. And that's why I think it's a system problem, because they don't go back and fix what happened. Like, and that, when your child dies, you're like, what in the world? Why? And you're into yourself like, oh, my family, this is a tragedy for our family. But then you also think, what about the other families? What about the people after us? I can't live with that. I don't want someone else to come in here and get this bad care and not have their baby with them. So of course we want
Exactly.
to get involved, we want to go back there and tell them and educate them. And if they're not willing to hear us and involve us, like we're saying in these meetings and everything, we're trying to be a participant and they only want to theorize about it. Well, that's a big problem.
Exactly. It's like you can't solve a problem without all the players at stake, right? So like, yeah, we need the doctors, we need the scientists or whatever, but we also need the people. We need the humans. We need the people who have been affected by what's going on, because they can tell you like firsthand of not just the medical experience, but also that physical experience of what symptom did I have that somebody else didn't. You know what I'm saying? Like, from a preeclampsia HELLP syndrome perspective, we talk about like each stillbirth is different, each baby's different, their movements are different. So is every pregnancy. There's no pregnancy that's exactly the same. So for you to use data about pregnancies and use everything exactly the same is a disservice to the patient, point blank period, because my pregnancy was completely different than yours. I didn't have morning sickness. I know people who were sick the whole time they were pregnant.
They were
So
fine.
every pregnancy is
Yeah.
different. There's no pregnancy that's the same.
No.
And we have to start working that way.
And I
We
think
have to,
like the
we have
sugar
to work
coating,
in
I
that.
think is really sad. Like it's almost like we just want women to keep having babies. So let's not worry them.
But
Let's
we
just
can't even
pretend we're
pretend.
having babies.
We could get into this right here, but
No, do you want to? You could go there. I could go a little longer, but the thing is,
like we can get into this
don't
because
set up women. Like the thing is, I gave that out in my speech for the big push because I felt like that was core to the reason my loss happened is the way I was raised as a young girl to
Mhm.
listen, to obey authority, to never really question. I didn't have a voice in my household or outside until I became an adult, which is like later in life, you're going to college and you're still following direction, you're still listening to professors and doing the work that they want you to turn in. And you don't really ever get transition and taught how to become this mother that has to now advocate and like speak for your child and push back, give the pushback that is needed. And you don't realize you need to be doing that in that situation because again, you feel like it's that same imbalance of power where they're the authority, they have the lab coat on, they're in charge, they've gone to school, they know more than you. So just listen and follow directions and do the right thing. So that's why I'm raising my daughter very different. I'm like, she could talk back all day long because I'm putting her out in the world prepared. I want her to be out there like, no, this doesn't feel right to me. I'm questioning this. So that's part of my spiel. I'm a feminist, but I think it's important to give everyone, opportunity at home and outside, just like you have a voice. You go into your appointments, you have a voice. They might say everything looks fine, say, well, but I'm not so sure. Hold on.
Right. But I think, it's important to also feel comfortable in that space too, to be able to do that because, there's that stereotype about Black women being angry and all these things. So, we go into it and some of us try to police ourselves whenever we have those conversations. So it's not like, oh God, here's this Black woman, this angry Black woman again, complaining about this, and this. So,
Yeah,
forget that.
no, that's big. I mean, that came into play with Charles Johnson and his wife who passed away, Sarah
Exactly.
Johnson, where he felt like he couldn't really get irate as he should have, possibly where he felt like he wanted to, but he was like, but I have to back down a little because then they're going to kick me out of here and I want to be with my wife. And then at the end of the day, people look like, why didn't you cause a scene? And he's like, of course I didn't cause a scene because what would have happened to me as a Black man is different from what would have been like for your white husband.
And exactly. And then, I think it's important that even physicians take stuff like that into consideration. Like, here's this Black man trying to advocate for his wife. If I get irate, like if he gets irate, what that's going to be like. So don't let him get there. Like, give him some grace, like help him to understand what's going on so he doesn't have to be that guy. But it's gotten to the point where now you just have to be that guy. Like, you just have to be that person.
So the Push for Empowered Pregnancy team right now, we're working on a lot of stuff. Like you were saying, you just had that big meeting with the NCIHD. And so we're presenting what we think research needs to be done on because there's a lot of areas of research that are just not touched. And, the racial factor is huge and paternalism is huge. And it's hard to look into those kind of issues, but they're coming up obviously in the statistics. So I mean, it's more, I think, listening and more, like you said, involving the parents because unfortunately, they're not really listening to anyone, it feels like, but
No.
I don't know why, like in your case, like you were so close to death. Thank God it didn't go that way, but it could have been. And I know that that's a big part of your trauma too, now carrying that and your husband as well.
Yeah, yeah.
Yeah.
It's interesting. Just think,
We didn't even talk about aftercare or anything like that,
oh,
which
we had so many other things to talk about.
we can do more episodes with Tomeka. If you guys want her back, send me a message. We'll come back and we'll do an update on Tomeka and everything that you're doing with Jace's journey too, because I think it's important to have local resources and you're in North Carolina. So if anyone unfortunately experiences a loss or you need help as your pregnancy is going, make sure you reach out to her. I don't know
Yeah.
if you want to share a little bit more about what options.
Oh, yeah. So you can connect with us on Instagram, Facebook. I think I have a TikTok now. TikTok, Twitter. I'm on Twitter. I don't tweet that much. I retweet a lot.
Mhm.
And it's jacesjourney.org. So www.jacesjourney.org. You can put a message in and I'll get it immediately. I'm at Tomeka James Isaac on Instagram and Facebook, and Jace's Journey. We have a Facebook page, so you can connect with us there too. So anywhere you see Jace's journey is probably us. I think there may be some other organization at some point, but if it pops up first, it's probably us. But yeah, please reach out if you need to, especially if you know, had a stillbirth and want to have, you know, talk to somebody. I'm always open to talk to people who've had, you know, this experience, because it's something you don't have to navigate by yourself. And there are plenty of people out here who are willing to talk to you through it and help you figure out what's best for you, and to help you navigate it. And because it's different and it doesn't go away, but you know, we move forward. So, and if you want to get into advocacy, you can always contact me too, because there are definitely a lot of different ways you can advocate in this space and in maternal mortality and all those things. So
We
definitely.
were in Washington, D.C. together.
Yep.
We had the
Well,
Stillbirth
wait a minute.
Prevention
We're
Day.
standing beside each other.
I'll post a picture later. It's funny because you circle around and you see the same people at different things, and then eventually you're like, oh, we could be friends now. We know each other. But I'm just so grateful for what you're doing too.
Me too.
I know
I
it's hard.
appreciate push so much. So, and thank you for like always including me. You and Sam, like the whole team is super awesome. And it's been such a joy to get to know all of y'all and just kind of work with you guys and break the silence, you know? Let's do it.
We're going to keep doing it. 2023, you're going to see some good stuff, and it's
Oh
going to
yeah.
get louder and louder until people hear us.
We're just gonna keep screaming.
Yeah,
Well, they're gonna scream.
going
I'm gonna cry real hard.
on. Well, you have a lot. I mean, it's a lot. It's emotional. Like, I'm upset a lot, but doing the work helps me with the
I'm the
grief.
same. I'm the same way. And people ask me that all the time because they're like, how do you? I was like, this is actually therapy for me,
Mhm.
because I feel like we get to kind of process it, you know, even though it's like over and over again. And yes, it's very painful. And sometimes I just need to like do nothing at all. But it helps me knowing that I'm helping someone else, or somebody may hear my story and it's like, oh, my doctor didn't get a urine sample on me last week. Let me just ask for one, because it's the simplest test that they do. Like it's the simplest thing that they do.
Everyone get your urine samples, even if they tell you they don't do that anymore. You can still nag them.
Ask for one. Make sure you get one. At least a couple. I'm not saying you have to do one every day, but just test the waters, pretty much. Just
And they
test
don't
them.
do third trimester ultrasounds for women who are low risk pregnancy. So that's another one I would recommend, especially like, let's say past 30 weeks and you start to feel maybe there's something wrong or the movement's different. Say, just run me an ultrasound real quick, because that could be a baby that's not growing as much and they just don't see it. And that's one of the also preventable, you know, stillbirth things. Is if you see the baby's not growing, that must mean something's going on with the cord or the placenta. So, you know, unfortunately, you're going to have to figure out a way to get this service if it's not standard care for you. But that's why we're here for you. You know, keep asking the questions and we'll tell you our experiences, because we're here to help one another. It's a community. I don't think, like you said, we don't have to do it alone. You know, if you're pregnant now, go ahead and DM any of us. If you're concerned about something, we'll back you up. You know, if you need somebody to tell you, yeah, that's not crazy, go for it, go get checked, you know.
Absolutely. Absolutely. And you don't have to have high blood pressure to be diagnosed with HELLP syndrome either.
Yeah.
Yeah. So
Everything
because your blood pressure is
different.
not high doesn't mean that you can't develop HELLP syndrome. I think preeclampsia, you have to have high blood pressure, but with HELLP syndrome, I think it's a little different. So you don't have to have high blood pressure to be diagnosed with HELLP, which was my case. So, so
Well,
that
we hope
protein in the
that
urine is probably going to be a better test, or a helpful test. So
Mhm.
try to get one if you can.
Yes, ask and ask and ask, be the squeaky wheel. So, I mean, that's the thing, is I don't blame the doctors per se specifically, because I know they come to this work as they want to help, they want to take care of babies, and they want to see these babies born healthy and alive, and us too. But it's a system where they're just overwhelmed, and they do have their insurance and, you know, our costs and all this stuff. So at the end of the day, they're rushing and they're trying to get you through, and they're trying to get to like however many patients they need to see in that day. So that's why we need to stop them, you know, and like create a relationship with them. Like you said, feel comfortable with them, make sure they know who you are, and make sure they know who your other kids are, your spouse, you know, whoever's with you, so that they feel like more invested in you personally. and that they can remember you, the next appointment. Because I also did what you did, where I had a different doctor see me in the group, and I was like, no one really knew me. No one really knew Owen. I don't think they would have caught it because they just barely glanced at the file. They didn't look at the prior ones very much, and they just looked at my current, blood pressure and whatnot, minimal things they did. And oh, you're good. See you next time.
Which is kind of defeating the purpose of having those records like there. Like what is the point? Like if you're not gonna review
But they
the
don't have
past.
enough time. They don't sit there looking in between. I mean, they might glance at it, like I said, they probably try, but so it's up to
So
us though to
so
carry our
many
own. Like you
things.
can get the copies too. I mean, you can be that person that's like, let me have the copies of my records. So every time you come in, you can go back and say, well, last time I came, I had this, do what you got to do. So
Yeah.
you can bring your baby home and you could be okay.
Yep, absolutely.
Yeah.
For
Well,
sure.
thank you so much,
Well, thank
Tomeka.
you for having me. I've had a
Happy
good
New
time.
Year, everybody. I hope
Yep,
that
happy New Year.
everyone has healthy, happy pregnancies. And again, if you experience a loss, it's not your fault, and we're here for you. I know this was a terrifying episode, but remember that Jace's death was preventable. Please take from it what Tomeka wants you to know. You know your body and your baby best. Demand the testing that you think you might need. Remember to share this episode on social media so you can help others in your circle grow their knowledge and have a better birth outcome. Remember that all the posts that we share and our episodes are not meant to be medical advice. We are simply trying to help you and inform you as you continue your pregnancy, but always remember that you should consult your provider if you have any questions or concerns. They're there to help you, and they are available to you 24/7, even if you have to go into the hospital or ER. Again, follow us on social media to continue up to date with our next episodes and our posts. And feel free to connect with us in the DMs. If you have any questions, we would be happy to be there for you. You are not alone. This is your community, and we hope that you will continue to watch our future and past episodes to continue to add to your knowledge as we interview birth workers, providers, researchers, and even people who have experienced different births, so that when you get to your birth, you'll be a little bit more informed and prepared for whatever comes your way. Goodbye for now.